Hello, so today I want to talk about prepping in PBE and how to get the most out of playing early in set 16. If you don't know, currently set 16 is in the beta environment where lots of people are playing it. That's why you might be seeing some content of set 16, but this is a way that you can use that early experience to try and translate into a more easy and more fun ranked experience when the set is actually live on December 3rd. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. On this channel, I'm normally doing daily TFT guides. Now I'm talking a little bit more about set 16 and prepping for set 16, and then once set 16 comes out and we know like the final balance of how all the units fall, there's gonna be daily guides on everything, all this stuff, Econ, how to play 4 costs, 5 costs, reroll, everything about that. So if you want to get in early, make sure to stay tuned. Additionally, I also stream live now, so if you ever want to play in PBE, you can also play with me with my viewer lobbies. I stream on YouTube. I used to always stream on Twitch, but now I stream on both. Anyways, what is PBE? PBE this, PBE that. What is PBE? Well, it's basically a test environment that is one patch cycle ahead. At any point in the game or at any point during any set, you can basically be in PBE or boot up a PBE client, and then you can play whatever the next cycle is. It's basically where things are tested, and it's a public test environment. The idea is that it's for testing, finding bugs, and adjusting. It's always one patch cycle ahead. So for those that don't know, patch cycles are every 2 weeks. Set 16 is in PBE for 2 weeks before the launch, because this is the next patch, right? Set 15 is currently on live, and for the next 2 weeks, we're basically working on trying to figure out everything that's wrong or going well with set 16. And then when it launches in right around now, it would be like closer to a week and a half on December 3rd. Then that's set 16's official launch where you play it on the live. If you want to play or participate in PBE, basically you just have to Google PBE League of Legends and you get to a page. It looks very similar to like the Riot Games page, and it's basically like a separate tab, right? You can even go on the regular page and go to PBE. You download a separate client. You might have to make a separate account, and then you can basically just queue into it. Like I have one called Fenrirba Cooking or whatever, and it's just like a separate account and a separate thing that you would then queue into and play. The other thing that's really important with PBE, is also the fact that they're very, very fast, and it's updates almost daily, right? There's patches pretty much every day. Sometimes there's like a patch before a big weekend, and right around before launch, like the last weekend before the set comes out, usually there's like a big final patch, and then there's going to be the adjustments that happen once the game goes to live. So as we get closer and closer to the date, the units, the augments, everything will start to be balanced to what the live ranked experience should be. So why should you play PBE? It's up to you if you want to play or not. I like to play in PBE because you get an early look at the new set. Additionally, it helps you to prepare for rank, get a little bit of a head start, which is what a lot of this video is going to focus on. Then you also can play it for learning, but then also just if you're excited, if you want to try something fresh, you know, you want to just like jump the gun a little bit. Additionally, in PBE, a lot of times like people are experimenting and trying to hit stuff and have fun. It's a lot more of like a casual experience. So if you're like looking to see like all the cool units, like 3-star 4 cost, 3-star 5 cost that you might not be able to hit in a regular ranked game, PBE is a great place where you can just like get it all out, play all the goofy comps, all the goofy things, and just like try and get stuff to work that otherwise might not be the most viable strategy when things are like, you know, when LP is on the line, so to speak. What are the main takeaways in PBE, right? When you're playing in PBE, I always promote that PBE isn't just about like forcing or playing around certain things, or like you know, oh, X comp is strong, therefore I will play it in PBE. It's not a ranked ladder, right? It's not even a normal game. It's literally like a bug testing, bug ridden mess of an experience where you're just hoping that they kind of fix everything before live. That's what it is, right? So like what you really want to do in PBE is get familiar with the units. You want to know the synergies. You want to know the carries, the tanks. Who is a viable carry? In TFT, there's units that are more support based. There's units that are more damage dealers. You want to have an idea of what is the role of each of the unit so that you have an idea of what you can play towards. On 2-1 and you have a rod and a tier, who is the unit that you're going to play? Who are you trying to think towards? What are the other units that exist in the set? And what are their abilities and what do they do? You don't want to like find that out on live. You want to find that out ahead of time. You want to get familiar with the synergies. Know who has what synergies and which units slot into what boards pretty effectively. And then also you want to know who your mid-game carries are, right? You want to experiment. You want to see, okay, same thing, like, you know, we can have our end goal, which is all of the cool units that are really powerful, but then we also have to have our mid-game goals, right? Who is somebody that can aim for to hold items that's a good tank? Who's a good damage dealer that's a 1 cost or a 2 cost carry? These are the things that start to matter a lot, and it all starts in PBE. Of course, if you watch my channel and my guides, I always try and break down all of these steps along the way. I make trait-specific guides and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm sure you guys know if you're watching watching me, but if you're new here, I try and break down a lot of this stuff. But TFT, I think there's like an experience where it's always like, you know, just show me what the end board is. I'm going to put in my team planner, and if I hit, I hit, and if I don't, I don't. And it's like, that's not really a way that's sustainable to get like better at the game, right? If you want to like improve at the game and you want to have a good, really like snappy understanding and flexible decision making, it starts with just like understanding the functions of every unit, and the best place to learn that is in PBE before the set even starts, because then you just know, oh, this unit likes this unit likes that, these units have these synergies, and it makes you a lot more comfortable playing around all the other units rather than just like team planner yes, team planner no, which sometimes can be a little bit of a detriment. Obviously it depends on the set, but that's just something that matters. With unit familiarity, I like to always make like these little jokes, like, you know, you have to recognize the units, understand exactly what they're doing. I like to call them like building blocks, right? You have your 1 cost and your 2 cost that, you know, if you're not re-rolling, those are going to be units that are going to be early game carries. You have to know, what do I take with this unit? How do I transition that into a late game unit? There's lots of units where if you build items towards one, it can end up being an item that works out towards some of the later ones. For example, right, if I'm starting out early and I show you this amalgamation of 1 cost from set 16, you have to have an idea of what can I play early game that can transition into something that's a little bit more powerful late game. One great example is playing around Demacia with these invokers, right? Sona is a great AP carry. She actually does decent damage right now, and then you can easily fit in some early game synergies around the 1 cost, right? This is a board where you have a reliable front line, 2 defender, right? You have some front line 1 cost, some back line 1 cost, and then if you happen across one of the higher cost Demacia units, you can activate Demacia, which then gives all of your units extra armor and allows them to do some extra damage as well by reducing mana cost. Understanding this type of board and how you can transition later, let's say you want to keep within Demacia trait, a later game AP carry is Lux, right? Is Lux particularly broken on PBE right now? I don't know. Is she going to be broken on live? I don't know either. It really depends on the balancing. But the idea is like understanding, hey, these are early game units I can play around, and then I know about a goal that I can have later. And that comes with understanding familiarity, how the units can lead into each other, how the units can kind of evolve and unlock themselves, which we'll talk about a little bit second, because that's a whole other thing with this set, is unlocking units. But basically, you also want to know roughly what the units want. If they're an AP carry, do they want blue buff? Do they want Shojin? Are they an auto attacker? Do they want a Gwinsu? Do they want a Kraken? Do they want IE? These are things that you start to figure out in PBE, either through trial and error, but also looking at the experiences of other people in your lobby. You're in a lobby with 7 other people. Those 7 other people hopefully are playing different units, different comps. Check out what each of their builds are and see what their placements are. At the end of a PBE game, you can see, okay, these guys all had shitty boards. That didn't look right. These guys all had good boards. That looked a little bit better. That's part of like the unit familiarity and understanding everything. But one thing about unit familiarity that I always like to talk about is like understanding the units on a roll down and being able to visually tell them apart. This set, I think, has great visual clarity. I always talk about this a little bit. It may be like a little bit of a boomer thing. I'm not that old, but you know, like I'm not like in my teenage years anymore, but like for me at least, I always have problems figuring out which units are what, right? Like in set 15, I talked about this example quite a bit, because in set 15, like if you look at these Mighty Mech units on a roll down, they all look very similar. They all have helmets, they all have similar color schemes, right? It's sometimes it's a little bit harder, and then that compared with Wraith, that Wraith also has like similar helmets and color schemes, it can be hard in a stressful situation. Set 16 is a little bit more visually clear because like there's not like extra skins and stuff. They're like the champions from their default arts, so they look very different amongst each other, but you still have to be able to tell them apart and know what synergies and stuff they are. Let's say you're playing a game and you want to activate Bruiser. Bruiser is like heavyweight, it gives you HP this set. I tell you to find a Bruiser. Ready? Where's the Bruiser? You know, if you're doing a roll down and you're trying to figure them out, are you hovering every single unit and looking at them? Oh, is this a Bruiser? Is this a Bruiser? Is this a Bruiser? A lot of it's just understanding. Like at one point, I'm sure if you play longer and longer in TFT, you just know which units are what. The answer is this Mundo. This Mundo in the middle here. So he has the dumbbell icon. He is the Bruiser that we were looking at. But then there's another problem, which is also like, you know, if you play a lot of TFT, past sets can even mess with this, right? When you start off a new set, like at least for me in PBE, Cho'Gath is almost always a Bruiser. This exact splash art of Cho'Gath was a Bruiser in set 9. And Mbessa was a quick striker in set 13. And in this set, she's not a quick striker. She's a vanquisher. Do you know what these words mean? Exactly. That's part of like playing PBE, because then when the set goes live, you're not completely lost and feel like a fish out of water and just meandering. You do all of that in PBE, then when the set goes live, you just kind of play the game and you're really comfortable. But One aspect that I do like to mention is building blocks, right? Different people call them different things. I say building blocks. So I often also use the word of like a core, like I'm playing around a Freljord core, right? What I mean is like the main units that I'm playing are part of this particular synergy. Some people call them packages and groups. I've seen other top level players use those type of language or lingo. But the idea is that you want to know inter-trait synergies and units that you can easily just slot in to benefit your board. This set, one of the main goals is to balance it in a way that allows flexible play. This is a core aspect of flex play. It's not just a matter of insert board, optimal board. It's a matter of understanding which units fit really well with each other, and you can just kind of insert these little packages or these little cores or these building blocks of units in order to structure a very strong board. Some examples, right, that I would talk about a little bit here. I'll show you two examples, right? One is Ionia, right? 3 Ionia right over here, right? Ionia, it's a 3 trait, but inside the Ionia trait, you have the shared synergy of Bruiser. You have Shen, who is a Bruiser as a 1 cost, and you have Wukong, who is a Bruiser as a 4 cost. So based on your early game, a lot of times if you're angling towards Ionia, you might consider yourself to hold on to Shen and in anticipation of eventually hitting a Wukong later, because then, you know, set has an easy unlock condition. One thing about this set, which we'll talk about in a second, is also the unlocks. There's units that have conditions to unlock. That's the main set mechanic. So understanding what the unlock conditions are for the different units is another thing. But either way, a lot of times on level 8, you can very easily have a board that looks like this, because you could easily just get granted a set for free. So understanding that, hey, Bruiser, which in this case gives my whole team 150 health, that's a nice little core or a little package that I can put that gives my entire board extra HP, which buffs everybody. And then I get the set and I tie it together. I have 3 units with 2 synergies. Wonderful. Another example of something you can play around is Freljord. Freljord is something, I kind of like it. I think it's cool. If you activate Freljord, you get this target dummy, and based on the positioning of the dummy, you buff the units above, in front of it or behind it with damage amp or HP. With Freljord, there's another inter-team synergy, which is Invoker. Invoker is basically like mana generation for your units, but it gives your whole team 1 mana regen. Again, a team-wide buff that you can just slot in to Invoker, and bang, your whole team gets a buff. Additionally, if you slot in Freljord, your whole team gets a buff. You get a target dummy and your entire team gets some extra HP and some extra damage amp. Freljord also has different frontline traits. They don't have a frontline synergy per se, like tied into their board, but there's many Freljord units that have different frontline synergies, right? Even Volibear, who is an unlockable unit, has Bruiser. Then you also have Warden on Braum, and you also have Defender on Sejuani. So what you can do in order to fit in the trait synergy of 3 Freljord, for example, you can basically figure out which one of these frontline synergies do I want most. Either unlock Volibear if you need to play Volibear, or you just go for these one of these two, Sejuani or Braum, and slot it in. And now you have Invoker, you have these backline AP units that can hold AP items, and you get Freljord active with this little package. These are things that really tie themselves together really nicely. And it's something that allows you to very easily flex around what you have. If you have some of these Freljord units early, it's like, okay, I have this little self-contained little set of units. They give my rest of my team a bunch of buffs. Now I'm free to play anything else. I can play a 5 cost that I hit. If I see a random 5 cost, I can just throw that in and then give them a synergy that helps them out. If I see another 4 cost on my roll down, either a front line or a back line, I can throw them in and build again, make an extra little core and just slap them together. That's a big part of flexible play, which is what this set is trying to achieve. We'll see how it comes into fruition when the set actually launches, by the way. I don't want to like jump the gun and say this is going to be the most flexible set we've ever seen in our lives, but a big part of it is understanding the ability to interchange different units, and that's something that you can really learn from in PBE, so that you're not just forced to randomly just follow a guide like one of the ones that I put out and just say like, oh, these are the units I'm going to put in my team planner. Instead, you kind of have like an idea of, oh, these little 3 I can put together, let me think of another little 3 that I can put together, and then you hit the other little 3, you throw them together, and boom, you have like a really strong and coherent board. It's also understanding important low-cost units. So this set, they're making leveling a little bit harder to do, which is something that's like, you know, sorry, when I say leveling a little bit harder to do, there's more of a gap in gold to level from 7 to 8. And I talked about it in a previous video if you want to check that out. But it basically makes Econ really important, but at the same time with the leveling, they also made the odds increased for 4 costs and 5 costs at later levels. So level 8, level 9, level 10 have a decreased chance of finding 1 and 2 cost units and an increased chance of finding 4 and 5 costs to make it more reliable that you can hit your 4 and 5 cost carries. part of that means that a lot of times you might be in X unit jail, right? For example, let's say you're trying to do what I was saying before. You're trying to play around set and you want to fit in that little Ionia setup that you have. It's going to be very hard, even harder than previous sets, to find a set on level 8, level 9, level 10. You're probably never going to see a set later. It's just really low odds now of seeing those units. So holding on to these units on your bench or on your board is really important, and understanding which of these one cost units are crucial to certain synergies. For example, Jarvan's pretty important for Demacia. There's some units that are tied to unlocks as well, like if you have a certain number of star levels. Understanding which units are important to hold on to can really adjust or make changes on how you decide to play around the game, and just knowing which units are important that have these late game synergies that tie into these other units is something that's going to help you out quite a bit. And a lot of that comes from experimentation. I'm showing you the Bruiser Ionia one. I think that's one of the most common examples. I also showed you Freylor. That's another common example. There are other ones that exist in the game. It really comes and goes depending on how important those traits are. Now, unlock conditions. If you don't know, in set 16, one of the main mechanics is this unlocking, where if you do certain things, you will unlock different units. And then when you unlock the unit, it will appear in the furthest right shop of your next roll. I talked about this already in other videos, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but just know, if we go here, these are all the unlock units. Now, the unlock conditions for some units are very common, right? You have units like Shadow Isles, where they unlock by just playing other Shadow Isles and playing the trait and earning the souls that you get from the trait, so it feels like a very progressing system. You have units like some of these 7 costs, like for example with Shadow Isles with Thresh, you have like these Kingpin units. There's a 5 cost, for example, and then you also have other units that have specific conditions, right? Like T-Hex having star levels on Piltover. They make sense. Like if you're playing a trait or playing a synergy, there's like a boss character or a boss unit that you can then get after playing that board for a very long time or reaching certain conditions. But other units have specific conditions that are flexible and can allow you to very easily hit. Things like Aatrox and Set. These are probably 2 of the easiest 5 costs to hit, but also understanding how to play around these units, as well as the fact that everybody can unlock them and anybody can play them. There's like a trade-off of, do I invest the board and the gold in order to play these units? Does it make sense for me to play these units on my board? Because you can't play them every game, because obviously if other people are playing the same units as you, they're going to make it harder for you to hit those upgrades later, and then if your whole game plan hinges on these units, it can be really detrimental later. But the idea is that, you know, Set, you can easily unlock him. 1 unit in your first 2 rows, level 8, you just get a 5 cost, bang. If you can afford to buy him, he's on your board. Aatrox, if you have a unit with a bunch of Omnifam, bang, you get Aatrox. So a lot of times you can structure your game plan around playing around these these high cost units, excuse me. But understanding the unlock conditions for everybody, as well as just knowing the unlock conditions, these are things that either come from experimentation, you can look it up yourselves, but I suggest just doing it through gameplay, right? Understanding like how things work, testing the unlock conditions, for example, right? Like LeBlanc, she says like, you know, if Sion has 2 items, you unlock LeBlanc. I tested. Does Thieves Gloves work on Sion to be 2 items? It doesn't. So that doesn't work. Now I know. I won't make that mistake in live. I didn't get my LeBlanc when I put a Thieves Gloves on Sion. Stuff like that starts to matter, because those are the optimizations and the things that you might just throw your game plan around for not hitting correctly. There's other units like Ryze. Ryze, I felt like before, used to be a very flexible late game option. They actually just nerfed him. Before, with Ryze, you basically would play 4 region traits. So these aren't like classes. These are like certain ones like Demacia, Yordle. It's basically all the ones that he gets bonus effects from. And then he basically gets these bonus effects based on which of the synergies you play. Now they made it 5. 5 is really hard to fit in. Before, you can easily get a Ryze on level 8 and very easily, like almost guaranteed, get him on level 9. Now it's like you need very specific boards on different levels in order to actually cash out the Ryze by fielding the 5 region traits, because there's very few options. Understanding those boards as well can be really impactful, because if you're in a spot where you could play around Ryze, or you have good Ryze items, understanding which units to hold in specific boards for cashing out Ryze is something that's going to matter. I wanted to make a full Ryze guide. It was going to come out like in a couple days, but now I have to redo it because it's basically completely irrelevant, because they changed them in PBE. But that's how it is. Every single day, they can functionally just change how the units work, and that's like a really important aspect. So it could be really frustrating in some regards, but in the main case, the idea is that you're trying to get familiar around playing different boards and different units. So what should your approach be to PBE? I always recommend that every single game you should have at least 1 new unit on your board with items. That should be a new tank or a new main carry. So when you're structuring your board and you're trying to think who is going to be my main carry that's going to get 3 items, it should be different every single game. And who is my main carry that's going to get 3 items as who is my main tank that's going to get 3 items? It should be different every game. You might play the same board, you might play similar synergies, you might play similar comfort things, right? But you should always be switching who you're playing, because that way you get familiar with the larger cast of the units, and it's just worthwhile for your time. If you want to see some extra comps, some extra ideas, and some extra boards, I have on my VOD channel, I try and do a different comp every single day. I'm trying to post like 2 VODs per day, but I'll see if I can keep that up. It might just be 1 today, but I'm basically playing different things every single game. I'm experimenting, I'm trying stuff out. I tried Demacia reroll. I never saw anybody play it, so I tried it, and I'm just showing you all the fruits of those labors on VOD channel if you want to see some examples of what I do. But either way, you want to get a baseline understanding of every single unit when you're playing in PBE. That's like one of the main things that you want. What you shouldn't be doing in PBE is repeatedly play the same strong board. Now, of course, if you're playing PBE for fun and you don't care about getting better, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video in the first place, because this video is probably titled something along the lines of how to get better at set 16 by playing PBE. So if you're not interested in getting better, then disregard this slide, because I can't tell you what to do. You can do whatever you want to have fun. But there are so many people, there are so many people that you just like Google what the strongest comp is, and even in PBE, you're just like trying to just like play something that's either bugged or unbalanced just for the sake of, I don't know, whatever you want to say. It's like the small dick energy, or whatever the they them equivalent is, or the she her equivalent is. Apply it to whatever person that is, right? It's just like, just play everything and try and experience the different things in PBE, because when there's patches that happen every single day, it doesn't matter if something is particularly strong. Look at Rise, right? Rise was really broken. Now it's really hard to play around Rise. Within 1 day, they made it a very specific and difficult thing. Aurelian Soul, there were so many people spamming Aurelian Soul in PBE. This happens every single PBE. People just find something that's broken, they do the exact broken thing, and they just like farm wins for, I don't know, for Boko dollars, because it's not even ranked. It's like, it's PBE, and then you just waste all your time. You're wasting everybody's time, because I can't learn anything new from looking at your board, because you're just playing the thing that everybody knows is going to get nerfed, and then you're not learning anything because you're playing something that you know is going to get nerfed, and nobody's getting any better. And the other thing is, it's like, you know, the same type of thing. PBE is about finding bugs. It's about finding the problems, about looking for edge cases where things are strong or things are weak. It's not about like checking whether the wall is stable. It's not like, you know, like, yep, this wall next to me is not collapsing. It's like, yes, we all know the wall in my room is not collapsing. We don't have to check every 5 minutes if the wall is collapsing. We should check, you know, something else, maybe the other 3 walls in the room, to see if they're collapsing. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a big part of PBE, and it's part of like the due diligence of like being a part of it, just to like make it a better place, as well as to also allow like, you know, the information that you give, because when you're playing it, all the data is getting given to Riot devs. That allows them to balance it a little bit easier, right? Set 15 had really bad balance, right? Nobody in PBE, even then, was playing Gangplank reroll. Not a single person. Everybody was playing Bastion snipers. I remember it. You can go back, you can look at VODs, you can look at everything. Everybody was spamming Bastion snipers and Prismatic Battle Academia. Ask yourself, in set 15, has there ever been a point in time where somebody was playing 4 Bastion, 4 Sniper? It was never a good comp. You know why? Because after the 1 day that or the 3 or 4 days that it was broken in PBE, it got nerfed to the ground, and it was never good. That's what you don't do in PBE. You instead try and find the bugs, try and find the issues. If you find a bug, report it as well. You can report into Mort Dog's Discord, and you try and like learn stuff, right? Because whatever you do, it also allows the other people to look at what you're doing and also learn. You should also never fixate on stuff, by the way. You shouldn't grief others or contest rerolls either. I think that goes without saying. Where there's no reason for you to look at somebody's spot and be like, oh, I'll just play the same reroll as them. Let's both not hit and go 8th, because that's going to be a great learning experience. There's also like, you know, don't be sure about anything. Don't fixate on the current patch. Like I said, there's a patch every single day in PBE. And also, this one, I like to say, don't spend too much time theory crafting. A lot of people, they spend all their day just like trying to cook up comps and trying to cook up things. things, get practical experience, right? Don't just try and like make something with like all the traits lighting up on the left side of the board. It really comes down to like the final balance and the roles of each of the units, right? Whether they're actually like properly designed as carries, or if they're more support units, or if they're tanks, or if they're like secondary tanks and stuff like that. Just try and find ways of playing them so you have a better understanding of what they want to be successful instead of theory crafting what they want. I think that's like a really important thing. Like, how deep into a synergy does Lysandra need in order to function correctly? How deep into a synergy does Lux need in order to function correctly? That's not something that, unless you're mathing it out by numbers to see like how the scaling works on the unit, it's better just to try it out and see, oh, this game I tried her with 7 Demacia, seemed kind of shit. This game I tried her with 6 Arcanus, seemed a little bit better. Gives you a better idea of where the unit kind of falls, and then if there's balances, adjustments to like Demacia or Arcanus, you have like an idea of how it kind of will fall into place. One thing I did want to say a little bit, as a wrap up here, I want to give you some easy comps or some easy things you can play if it's your first time playing in PBE. I don't recommend hard forcing anything. Always try and play something that somebody else isn't playing, just so that you can fill the lobby with more knowledge and experience for everybody else. But Shadow Isles, for example, if you start with a 2-star Viego, and you give them items, it will unlock the Yorick, which will give you the Shadow Isle synergy, and then they slowly unlock themselves as you continue to play them. I've seen people have success playing reroll around Viego and Gwen 3-star. And also, this trait has a lot of synergies that work with 5 costs. I've also tried it with tempoing, so playing around many of the different 5 costs, because it's very easy to slot in a huge amount of these units, just because they share a lot of the synergies with the Shadow Isles units. So this is like a great comp where you can try it as either reroll, or you can try it in terms of like tempo, you know, just like push really aggressively, get your Thresh unlock, and then use the Shadow Isles because they scale the more souls that you get. And then you can like try and pivot or play a bunch of the 5 cost units on a high level and see if you can like cap your board out around some of these more expensive units. Another comp that's pretty easy to play around is Void. Void similarly unlocks different units. With Void, you actually can unlock Kaisa as a primary carry and the Rift Herald as a primary tank by just playing the Void trait, right? Rift Herald unlocks for 8-player combats. Kaisa unlocks if you field a long shot and you make it to level 8. Kog'Maw, the low-cost Void unit, is a long shot. You also, if you make it to level 10 and you have all the Void units, you can unlock Baron Nashor, which is a 7-cost win condition type of unit, where it's like a way of just experimenting and capping out your board. This one's pretty easy because, once again, it's more of a vertical trait. The ones that I'm picking here are traits that are more like geared towards less like, you know, dropping out and flexible, and you're more rewarded for playing around the traits. Obviously, you can drop out on some of the units once you get like Nashor, and you can like make your board a little bit better. Same with Shadow Isles. If you're not re-rolling the units, you can drop out about some of them and just play the ones that matter for the synergies that are on your board. You can do similar things like that and experiment. Additionally, Bilgewater. Bilgewater, you basically get this shop that you keep buying stuff from, which gives you either power-ups or copies of units. Because it gives you copies of units, you can often find yourself re-rolling and 3-starring a bunch of units. Similarly, if you have a Bilgewater opener, like a Twisted Fate will unlock Graves if you itemize the Twisted Fate, and they both have an effect where they power up each other. So you can basically like use these. You have inter-team synergies like Bruiser for frontline once you get to Tom Kench by spending all of your Bilgewater Boko dollars. And you also have Gunslinger that you can eventually play around MF as a backline carry. So this one's another one that's pretty easy. Last easy one that I want to talk about was Yordle. Yordle is basically like more of the dedicated reroll related comp. They kind of unlock themselves. There's a lot of unlocks, but they unlock as you like get more of the Yordles active. With Yordle, you know, if you 3-star your units, they get extra stats, and then you also get extra rerolls and grab bags and stuff for playing the deeper Yordle synergies. A lot of times people play around Teemo and Tristana. Besides that, what I would always recommend is playing around easy to unlock units. You should just aim to try and unlock a different unit every time, right? Whether it be like some of the ones that are tied to traits like Galio, where if you play all the Demacian units, or if you play a bunch of Demacia star levels, you can get Galio. There's units like Tom Kench, which we talked about with Bilgewater. Volibear, if you have a lot of HP, so if you're playing Bruisers, it's pretty easy to unlock. The Shurima units you can unlock pretty easily if you find an early Azir. But there's also easy unlocks like Aatrox Set. I would recommend just trying to make a creative board, try and find units that share synergies together, either out of game or in game, in order to make like fun boards, and that can kind of get you more familiar with flexing around the different synergies. Of course, if you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe, but thanks for watching. Hopefully this guy was a little bit helpful just in like introing what PBE is kind of like and how it is. Obviously, what I always recommend is trying your hardest to experiment while in PBE. There is no LP on the line. It does not matter. If you lose a game, you can just FF and leave. Like, it's a very common occurrence in PBE. Not a lot of people are taking it seriously, like, you know, like a ranked ladder. So this is your time to just learn and just be in the most free-form way to just try stuff out. Try different itemizations, try goofy builds, put an Archangels on a frontline unit type of beat, like anything you want, because at least that gives you a baseline from which then when there's patches, patch notes, patch reviews, different comps that might exist later in the game, it allows you to more easily be able to root yourself in what's going on in the set instead of being completely lost with what the units are, right? A lot of times, like, you know, when a patch happens, you might not even know the existence of certain units or play certain units, and then you're already seeing them getting buffed or getting nerfed, and you're like, I don't understand where this unit came from. It's like when you have that baseline, it helps you to like judge and understand that parts later. Understand those parts later. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully it was fun and hopefully it was informative. But have a great day and see ya. Bye bye.